again, just like to all the class 11 student. So in our last session we concluded with the first chapter, that is Constitution, why and how. In that lesson we have learned how the Indian Constitution was framed and who were involved in the framing process and what kind of election method they have used to elect those members, right, the members of the Constituent Assembly. And not only that, we have also discussed about how the Constitution gets its authority, right? So today we were going to start with a new chapter, that is rights in the Indian Constitution. Now this is the way one of the most important chapter, since it is related with the rights. Now I'm sure everyone is pretty much aware about these rights. What does it mean, right? So rights means rights is a privilege which is bestowed upon to the citizens of respective country by their constitution. So through these rights, any individual is, or we can say a citizens, is allowed or enabled to make an all-round development in his life, or we can say he can do, it allows them to do certain things, like they can live their life without any restriction, and they can share their opinion, they can express their thoughts, keeping in mind the limitation. And it is very important that right doesn't mean that you have unlimited powers, or we can say unlimited freedom. You have to, at the same time, when you are enjoying your rights, you have to keep in mind that there are certain limitations on your rights. You are not allowed to create a problem to other person while you are enjoying your right. Okay. But before we go any further with this right, this particular topic, rights in the Indian Constitution, there are certain rights which allows the Indian citizens to enjoy their life, in which they are able to express their thoughts, share their views, and even criticize their own government, right? So these are some of the right. There are certain right which allows them to do certain things. But before we go any further with this particular topic, let us try to understand how the concept of right have emerged in a history, and or we can say, let's try to find out the origin of the concept of right, since this concept is did not came out of blue. So it must have some kind of history, some history behind its emergence, okay, in a society. So in order to understand the origin of the concept of right, we have to go back as far as in 15th of June 1215. So this day marks a very important date in the modern legal history. And on the same day, on that day, what happened was, there was a king known as King John of England. So he signed a charter known as Great Charter of Freedom. So it is also known as Magna Carta in Latin. So the importance of this charter was, it basically laid the foundation for the modern legal rights. So prior to this date, there was no concept of right in a human history. So since this particular day, people have realized the importance of these rights. Through this right, they were able to express their, or we can say they were able to criticize their own ruler. Since these, during this period, so most of the world, any regions of the world were ruled by either king or queen. So that was a monarchy, right? So people were suffering from their arbitrary rules. So they realized the importance of these rights. So this day marks a very important in the history of modern legal right, which paved the way for the rights that we enjoy nowadays. Okay, or we can say it laid the foundation. So in this charter they have signed, they have made a number of provisions for the people to enjoy a certain right, and it varies from country to country. So not all the charters are same. There are a number of charters which were later signed after inspiring from this charter in a different country, but the rights are varies from country to country. Okay, so earlier, so if we talk about the history now, during the period of king's rule, right, king's or queen's rule, it was believed that there's a divine right. If you heard about a divine right, now there was one right divine right. Now what do we mean by divine right? Now there was one right prior to the charter that is not confined, or it is not for the people, but instead it was for kings. So the kings have justified their rule by saying that it is their divine right. During that period of time, they believe in a God, right? Most of the people are they were the firm believer of the God, and kings have justified their rules by saying that gods have bestowed upon them a duty to rule the country. So after God, it comes a king. Okay, now I'm saying this to make you more clear about how these rights have emerged in the history of legal rights. Okay, so these now, in short, we can say that now this day marks a very important date in a modern legal right. Okay, modern legal right. Okay, so now let's move on to the Bill of Rights. Now these chapters have eventually inspired a number of countries. For example, USA, one of the strongest countries in the world as of now in terms of economy, military, and their culturally, right? So even these countries, even the USA have inspired when they were framing their constitution. They were inspired from these charters and made their rights on the basis of Great Charter of Freedom, or we can say a Magna Carta. Okay, and they have introduced certain rights to the people that is known as Bill of Rights. Now it is nothing but the rights which is listed in the Constitution of United States, and not only mentioned in the Constitution, but they are also being protected by the Constitution of United States. So that is known as Bill of Rights. These are the certain rights which allows the citizens of United States to enjoy, or we can say do certain. It allows them to do certain things. Okay, or we can say it is also their version of fundamental rights of Indian Constitution. Okay, so through these rights, the people of United States are supposed to enjoy their rights. They should be treated equal. For example, they should be treated equal. But as of now, there has been news surfaced in recently in the United States that there was an incident in which a black people was killed by an officer. So still, even though they have a strong constitution, but there are things which are still happening in the United States which violates the rights of an individual. Okay, right, and Okay, so far we came to know that even though the Indian Constitution was considered as one of the finest constitution in the world, and the members of the Constituent Assembly have put a lot of effort to make such a fine constitution, but they also had to borrow some of the ideas from the other constitutions of the country, like United States, France, Canada, and Britain, right? From the United States, they have borrowed the idea of Bill of Rights. So we can say that the fundamental rights of the Indian Constitution was inspired from the Bill of Rights of United States. So the both of the rights played a similar role in their respective country, which allows the citizens of their respective country to enjoy a certain rights through these rights. Okay. So the fundamental rights of the Indian Constitution was mentioned in the part 3 of the Article 12 to 35. Like we said in the first chapter, that Constitution is a compact of documents, comprises of number of articles. So these are the articles which consist 12 to 35, which consist of the fundamental rights, and these rights are mentioned in a part 3 of the Constitution. So there are a number of other articles. So these articles are divided into a number of parts. Okay. So the fundamental right is mentioned in the part 3 of the Indian Constitution, and the article ranging from 12 to 35. Okay. Now, why these rights are considered as a fundamental? Now, fundamental basically means it is a basic. So as a human being, it is very essential for each and every human to have a certain rights to make certain developments in their life. So as we humans are considered as a rational being, that means we are capable enough to differentiate between right and wrong. So through these rights, we can make a certain decision that can allow us to make a further development in our life, whether it is in our personal life or in our occupational life and in our religious life. Okay, so in order to make a all-round development, you have to have a certain right that can allow you to make a progress. Okay, and the second reason it is considered as a fundamental is it allows any citizens to live a dignified life. So without these certain rights, it would be very difficult, especially for those section of the people who are being marginalized in a society, especially scheduled castes, scheduled tribes. So these are the people who are likely to suffer most when if there is no rights in a society. Okay, so in order to live a dignified life, it is necessary to have certain rights which prevents the discrimination which is prevailed in a society, and to have a equality within the society. Okay, and the last reason was these rights are mentioned, as I told you before. These rights are mentioned, and not only mentioned but also well protected by the Constitution. Since what is Constitution? Now the Constitution is considered as the fundamental law of country. Okay, so since the Constitution is considered as the fundamental law of the country, which is being abided by all the citizens, that means it is a basic law for all the citizens within the territory of their country, any country. Okay, so since these are the some of the rights which is being protected by the fundamental law of the country, therefore it is considered as a fundamental rights of a citizen. Okay, and these rights are any institution are not allowed to violates those rights. Otherwise, if they violate, they will going to face the consequences from the judiciary of the country. Okay, so basically the judiciary, what judiciary does is they will going to try to provide a justice among the society. Okay.